Time now for our social story, where we post and you decide what story we dive into. And this week, you chose between Cracker Barrel's rebranding backlash, the Menendez brothers' bid for freedom, and Alligator Alcatraz ordered to shut down. And 53% of you voted for us to follow the latest in the controversial immigration detention center. A federal judge is ordering the Trump administration to effectively wind down operations at Alligator Alcatraz over there in the Florida Everglades. So let's bring in Executive Director, Friends of the Everglades, Eve Samples, to break this all down. Eve, thank you for spending some time with us here on this weekend. Now, you say this order is a landmark victory for the Friends of the Everglades. Tell us why.
That's right. We filed suit on June 27th with our co-plaintiffs at Center for Biological Diversity, and we were joined by the Miccosukee tribe. We filed suit under a very common sense federal law called the National Environmental Policy Act. It requires the government to look before it leaps when it takes action, to analyze the environmental impacts of its actions, to consider alternatives, and to take public input. And none of that happened when this mass detention center was built in the heart of the Everglades, surrounded by the country's first national preserve, Big Cypress National Preserve. So our lawsuit presented compelling evidence to the judge that harm was occurring, and the judge last Thursday night decided to halt activity at this site. A preliminary injunction was issued. So as we sit today, no new detainees can be moved onto the site, no new construction, and within 60 days, the site has to be dismantled in an orderly fashion.
Now, Governor Ron DeSantis is already reacting to the ruling, saying he will not be deterred by, quote, an activist judge. So what do you think is next for Alligator Alcatraz?
So the judge's 82-page ruling was extremely thorough. She cited evidence presented in court about 20 acres of new asphalt that was laid at the site with inadequate stormwater systems to protect these sensitive Everglades wetlands from being impacted. She also pointed to light pollution in the area. So this high-intensity lighting that has been installed at the site is in the heart of very sensitive habitat for Florida panthers, an endangered species that happens to be nocturnal. So I think the evidence in the ruling points out that the people at the highest levels of our government, have to comply with environmental laws in this country, and environmental laws stand on equal footing with other laws.
And Eve, the state of Florida has already initiated an appeal of the judge's order. So what's their stance, and do they actually have a case here?
That's right. So the state of Florida filed its notice to appeal almost immediately after this ruling on Thursday night. We expect the federal government to follow suit. They indicated they would. So we are prepared to fight that appeal, and it will head up to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta. But again, if you read the judge's 82-page ruling, it was very thorough and presented a lot of evidence, articulated the harm that's being caused to the Everglades right now. And she also cited President Harry Truman's words when Everglades National Park was dedicated, and she pointed out the fact that every governor of Florida, senators, politicians of all stripes have defended the Everglades for decades, and what's unfolded here over the span of 2 months really stands to undercut the massive bipartisan investment in Everglades restoration.
All right, Eve Samples, thank you for that information.